And today we have the President and Chief Human Officer of the Human Beauty Movement, Jennifer Norman.
It's so nice to be here. Thank you, Chris, for inviting me.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, well, look, we've known each other for a while. You decided
have.
to take the plunge and become an entrepreneur about a year ago, was it?
I did. I have been in the beauty industry for about 20 years.
And it's really deep.
And it's really deep, yeah. The beauty runs deep, right? And so, what I've been finding is that through the course of my career, which, I had very much love for, there was always something missing. And ultimately I realized, and especially now with, just a lot of things happening in the world, that focusing just on outer beauty is not going to help society. It's not going to help women. It's not going to help men. It's really one of the parts of the problem that has led to a lot of mental unwellness in the entire society, because people are starting to value themselves based upon what they look like on the outside, what other people think of them, and then they take those judgments to heart, and then it impacts them, and then they end up feeling so bad about themselves, and they're forgetting about the true amazing person that they are inside. And so what I wanted to do in starting the Human Beauty Movement was a couple of things. Number one, I wanted to really showcase an appreciation for universality, for diversity, and for inclusion. Mm-hmm. It's not the women's beauty movement, it's not the men's beauty movement, this is the human beauty movement. And so I personally don't consider myself a feminist, I consider myself a humanist. I really feel that it's better if we don't create these false divides, isolating each other from each other. I'd rather bring people together and say, look at all the beauty that is inside of us. It seems like a lot of people nowadays are really starting to focus on so much more. They want more purpose in their lives. And I think that, Exemplar is a great example of that, being quadruple bottom line. And that's the way that I'm founding my business and starting my business too, is that purpose matters. People matter, purpose matters, the planet matters, not just profits.
That's right.
And the drive and the love for profits has been a detriment, I think. For all the great things that capitalism brings, we all have to have that hard conversation about what we want to serve. Is it just the bottom line? Not anymore. I did not want to be part of a business that was just about the financial model and not about the human and the universal model.
Good for you. That's beautiful. But let me ask you about the aha moment. There must have been one, right? Were you sitting, you have a marketing background, so were you sitting in an office somewhere, like I can just imagine you marketing something that you felt was leading either women down the wrong path or like hiding authenticity rather than revealing authenticity and saying, this is ridiculous. Like, what was that moment?
Yeah. I will say that I had a series of aha moments, and it all kind of finally culminated and, said, you know what, you finally got to do this. I think perhaps there was a lack of courage as I was kind of going on my little journey. But, if I can just start from the beginning, when I was born, and that was back in Seoul, Korea, I was abandoned as a baby. I was left on the steps of a city building, and my life could have ended there if not for the people that had found me and brought me to an adoption agency. 6 months later, I was flown to New York and started a whole new life.
Wow.
And if it wasn't for the love and the compassion of another family that wanted to reach out, my life would have been on a completely different trajectory. As you go through life, you kind of don't think about those things. You grow up in middle-class society. You start to develop this sense of entitlement, and so you develop into a normal teenager. And then afterwards, something in me, probably because I had inherent Asian DNA, I was very competitive. I wanted to be the best. I looked towards role models and thought to myself, gosh, I wish I could be like that. Back when the supermodels were huge in the 80s, and that's when I grew up. It was always like you wanted to look like Claudia Schiffer, but you couldn't. You wanted to look like Cindy Crawford, but you couldn't.
Right.
And so then you felt bad about yourself. And so then you developed really, really bad self-esteem. I suffered from very poor self-esteem to the point that I became bulimic. Wow. And it affected me, and I would talk down to myself all the time.
Can I interrupt and just ask you, because that was a time, I remember growing up in this time, when models were so thin, and what was a part of the discussion was is just unhealthy. Like the image that the society puts on of what women are supposed to look like is just ridiculously unattainable and leads to bad stuff. Is that a part of it? Were you just a part of that?
Exactly. Yeah. There was a glamorization because it's on every magazine cover at that time. It's all across the news media.
Right.
Like this is what women are supposed to look like.
Right.
This is what men fawn over. And so it's this achievable ideal that we hold ourselves up to and compare ourselves. And by contrast of looking at, constantly looking up at and trying to be somebody else, you lose yourself.
Yeah.
And so that's where the power and the self-esteem diminishes in so many women at that very vulnerable and impressionable stage of life, which caused me to excel and achieve and strive and motivate me in one way, and ultimately did lead me to a 20-year career in the beauty industry, ironically. But however, inside it led to a lot of anguish and pain that I think a lot of people can probably relate to. And so in going through the beauty industry and knowing that, I did have this sense of this is easy, this is natural, this is something that I feel like I can embrace and enjoy, there were certain elements along the way that I started to kind of sit back and think, gosh, that just doesn't feel right. For example, I recall when I was working for a very large beauty company at one point, I was sitting in a meeting with the president of the company at that time, and we were going over forecasts and numbers and sales numbers, and he said, I don't like the way that number looks. I have a board meeting tomorrow, I don't like that number. Insinuating, change the number, fudge the numbers.
Wow.
And there were also occasions where we would come out with a new launch of a product, say it was a lipstick. We would make millions of components, get it to a certain place, ultimately to present it to the CEO of this very large company for him to say, I don't like that package. So we would end up scrapping millions and millions of components, just trashed, complete waste, complete and utter waste.
Wow.
And so there were elements within the beauty industry that I was recognizing were not considerate of integrity and potentially not considerate to the environment. Fast forward many years and think about what microbeads have done in our cleansers, they're washing right down into our water systems and killing our plant life, killing animal life. And we just didn't have the foresight to think about these things because the profit model didn't essentially let us consider the planet, people, the environment, all of the things that we're connected to in order to make better decisions up front.
I want to hop in on that because, we read, there's books like Good to Great.
Yes.
Right? And so there's examples of these companies who, I'm not sure they said screw capitalism. I'm sure they just said, damn it, come hell or high water, we're going to care about our people or the world. And, there's a few enough of those companies, unfortunately, that they could write a book about them. It really should be too voluminous to write about. And unfortunately, it's like, where are they now?
Yeah.
Right? And it's, you almost let them off the hook there by saying that it was okay because capitalism doesn't permit it. And yet some companies just said, no, we're doing it. In fact, they were more profitable because they did it.
Yeah.
Do you sometimes wonder, like, where do we go? Like, do you ever wonder, like, how we got here?
Well, I do recognize that more and more people, because we're finally seeing the devastation that capitalism can raise when all we're thinking about is impulse and consume more and get more and be more, and my appendage is bigger than your appendage. And so it literally becomes like this contest of whose is bigger than whose. And all for the spirit of growth at any cost. Yeah. And so I think that enough people have woken up to the belief that that is unhealthy for the planet and for the people, and that a more sustainable and regenerative method is to start with why. Simon Sinek, start with why. And really become more purpose-driven and believe that you are responsible and beholden to a greater part of society than just the shareholders.
Right. So stakeholder capitalism, for
example.
Or conscious capitalism, they said. There's many ways that now is being framed, right?
Yeah. And that's why I became so intrigued when, number one, after, recognizing that, business unto itself was, there just was something inherently wrong about it. And then about 12 years ago, I had my own personal crucible, which was the near death of my son due to illness. And so that, when anybody goes through a really tough time, whether it's personal or professional, and I know that so many of you are suffering great grievances right now due to COVID. I mean, this is a life-changing moment for many people.
Yeah.
I went through my own personal COVID 12 years ago because my son all of a sudden became extremely ill, and it caused me to have to quit my job, be with him when he was in the hospital, and wonder if he was going to make it. By a miracle, he was able to make it, but life was never the same.
Yeah.
Priorities were just not the same. Beauty didn't really have the same meaning as it did before he became ill. The only things that mattered were family and love and health and happiness. And I think a lot of people now within COVID are finding that those values, those priorities are really what is going to hold us all together through this.
Isn't that the fundamentals?
Yeah. It's not the things that you can accumulate. It's not the bags. It's not the fancy cars. I mean, those are nice. Those are wonderful. And it's great if you have them. The things that we surround ourselves with are there to bring us joy and pleasure and happiness. They're not there to stress us out. And that's when your priorities get mixed up, is that when you start placing too much emphasis on the external rather than on the internal and those things that have no value, the love, the happiness, the joy, all of those values that we hold deep inside, which are priceless, that's when you recognize, wow, there's a big separation of what matters and what we're focusing on in society and as business members. And so, going through business, I ultimately decided last year that it was time. The time was right to make a split and do this on my own and surround myself with people and companies, organizations like Exemplar that had shared values that could really make a difference and an impact with everything that we do, and not just be bottom line focused.
So Jennifer, what's your perspective on this? As a guy, like I never got makeup. Like it just didn't register for me. No, I didn't. Not just buy it. I'm saying I just never got it. Like you think about kissing a woman, like I want to kiss the woman, not the chemicals. I'm just saying, like, and it is makeup seemed to me about like hiding yourself. It always seemed to me like you were removing yourself from authenticity to become something else rather than being beautiful.
Yeah.
And I couldn't put the words to it back then, but like when I think about it, that's what it meant to me as a guy. It's like I never got attracted to something that wasn't real. And the more makeup fudged on there, it just looked like I was kissing a clown or
Good
something.
for you. Good for you, Chris. You're an evolved man. You're a pretty woke man, so you might be a little bit different than some. But I will say that as with anything in life, there are healthy relationships with that thing and unhealthy relationships with that thing.
That's a good point. Yeah.
With makeup, I think that I look at a healthy relationship of makeup as being like an artist with paint. You can make something beautiful and aesthetically wonderful and evolved on Maslow's hierarchy. We have this sense of a need for appreciation of the aesthetic. And so those things are lovely. Those things help bring pleasure and joy and fun and excitement to the life that you have. But when you come to depend on that as an element of self-esteem, where you can't walk out of the house without a full face of makeup, or you're afraid that anybody will see the real you without makeup, that's where I think that the unhealthiness and the unwellness comes from a mental and emotional perspective with women. And a lot of women feel like men love red lips because and there's physiology and there's a lot of psychology that goes back into that because, women were deemed more fertile when they had rosy lips, and if they had long hair and lustrous, it had to do with sexuality and fertility, and are you going to be a good mother? Are you going to, be
ancient stuff, basically.
It goes back into primitive stuff. There's a lot of stuff still encoded in our DNA, which, has definitely, gone through a lot of iterations, but over time it's still there. There are still elements of that. But then, of course, it's cultural. There are different cultural elements of beauty. What's beautiful in one culture is different from what's beautiful in another culture. Yeah. But what it ultimately comes down to also is acceptance. Acceptance of yourself for who you are, and acceptance of others for what they look like and who they are and how they express their uniqueness. and coming together and saying, like, we are all one beautiful melting pot of humanity. Let us all celebrate who we are, how we are, what we are, how we decide to manifest and show up in the world, but then recognize, just like when we say namaste, the light in me honors the light in you, and knows and sees through this facade, this avatar that we all are, which we dress up and shapeshift and do what we do, in any given occasion because it's fun and because we like to. But yeah, developing a healthier relationship with the things that we interact with, the things that surround us, and not place too much weight and emphasis and merit on that. I often say, a lot of people will, they'll defend, their house, their cars. They'll get really angry. They'll be like afraid if somebody wants to, try to take something from them. Yeah. But should they? Is it really that you have that much concern and emotion tied to the things that you own and the things that you possess that you would be willing to hurt another person over that thing? I often will say, you know what, if somebody wants to come into my house and take anything, aside from anything that has a heartbeat, go for it. I really don't care.
That's not an invitation for a crime, by the way. Just saying as a lawyer.
It's not an invitation. I'm not going to hand out my address. But I'm just saying that I think that there is, it kind of gives you pause about what you're valuing in life and what you hold dear and what priorities you have. There's
a book called The Identity Myth. That really talks about we go through, we become teenagers and we start to like, there's a prep group and the goths and then this and that when you're growing up, like the in group and the out group. And at some point, though, you determine who you want to be because you don't know yourself, right? You're still finding yourself. And it's all about consumerism, though. It's about the identity myth is you one day to wake up deciding you want to be goth. And so you go buy a bunch of stuff that makes you look goth. But, you're constantly chasing sort of this perception of who you want to be because you haven't found self. And if you don't, change that habit when you're older enough to find self, to really consume you. We got to consume stuff anyways. Then people continue that habit, and it stays through life where we're just constantly chasing this myth of our identity, and we're all walking around with these sort of old childhood-based identities that we never shed because we didn't have moments like you had with your son that woke you up and said, my God, the only thing that matters is this right here. Yeah.
And I think a lot of times because, from a social acceptance perspective, from just an upbringing in Western culture, and I speak because I'm most familiar with Western culture, having been living in it, but, we go through life and we almost have marching orders. We almost feel like, you're supposed to go to school and then you're supposed to do this and then get a career and follow this rubric of society that we've kind of fabricated for ourselves. And then we search for identity within the rubric of society and what we've kind of created. And we do that without being mindful. A lot of times we just go through the motions, we listen and consume the media, we see what other people are doing, we imitate, we copy, we try to, find identity. And as you know, that's all ego. Yeah. It's all like, how can I define myself? People define themselves by their roles. I'm a mother, I'm a sister, I'm a Christian, I'm a Jew,
they have labels. It's like tags. It's
just like tags. And so, and I was, listening to a video by Prince EA recently who is like, you know what? You might be driving in a car, but you are not that car. You're not the car you're driving, are you? Yeah. No, that's just something that you're in. The same thing with this and the ego and the identity. It's just like, that's not you. That's a role that you're playing. You're a mom, you're a sister, you're a Christian, you're an entrepreneur. Yes. Those are roles that we surround ourselves to try to get to some form of understanding ourselves.
Yeah, that's right.
And if we'd only take that quiet moment, and a lot of times it's done through meditation and through presence and through really, really getting to know yourself and really understanding who you are, you realize that the only reason why you're here and who you are is to be. Yeah. We are all here to just exist. Yeah. We're all here to spread love and light and joy, and not let society get in the way because, through the evolution of time, things are going to change, we're going to change. And, the more that we can learn to be lovers of humanity and ourselves for the souls and the light that we have inside, I think the better we'll be.
Absolutely. Well, I have a thought occurred to me about just the makeup industry, right? Because you're doing human beauty movement.
Yes.
So we're doing this, and you've got some products here that you brought.
Yeah,
and what occurred to me was like, you were describing this outside in, sort of the world, my perception of what beauty looks like, and then sort of trying to copy that as the model of consumption and makeup, right? Is like, oh, that's beautiful, I want red lips because that model has them, or whatever.
Right, right.
Do people wear it differently? I mean, there's an angle here for human beauty in a new way. Do people wear makeup differently when they're wearing it focused on like self and authenticity, or enhancing your natural features, or like you're coming from a place that is a full, realized, like confident self?
Yeah, I will say, just as a lot of companies are, they're initiated some way for some purpose. And I'm going to kind of boil it back to what was the purpose behind what that company was doing. And so if somebody founds a company, and what the original intent of that company is to make a lot of money. Maybe it's like, I'm going to sell this makeup because, boy, women are really buying this, and I'm just going to, put all these colors out, and and it comes through in the marketing. It comes through in the way that the messaging, resonates. And then you throw that out there, and then, of course, by virtue, you're going to get people who are going to be attracted to that and buy into that, that intention. The intention of the human beauty movement is far different. It is to build people up from the inside out, not the outside in. And so knowing that, we're going through our communication and everything that is the way that the organization is set up, which is not going to, kind of go by the old standard model of ego, and we can talk about that in a minute. But it's really to serve humanity and help them appreciate and understand the light that is within themselves, the beauty that is within themselves. And oh yeah, by the way, we have products, but those products are only there to serve you in your journey back to yourself.
Yeah.
And so, and they're not there to say, you're less of a person if you don't buy this product. They're not there to say that you are not whole, you're not complete, and we're going to complete you. This is not the Jerry Maguire thing. It's really about you are complete the way that you are. But as part of the joy of living, we're going to present you with some items that, number one, are vegan, that are, very, plant-centric, that are really, really healthy, made with wonderful antioxidants, fair trade ingredients, organic materials. It's going to be recyclable. It's going, a limited amount of plastic. So a lot of the things in the intention in the way that the products are constructed also follow the initial principles of the founding.
So when you talk about this, I can't help but to think myself. There's a book on selling that negativity, insecurities, fear has a selling power of 2 to 1 over positivity.
Absolutely.
And you would know this more than anybody as a marketer.
Yes,
and I'm sure you were like maybe disgusted by what you see, because you're just totally feeding into everything that's bad, like everything that keeps people down and keeps people insecure or feeling inferior, and you're playing right to that.
And I'm so glad that you brought that up, because it's true. That seems to be the model, the formula for what a product insight is. And it is that, there is that consumer insight. Oh my gosh, I have acne. I'm going to be a pariah if I have this acne and people see me, and therefore I will do anything, I will pay anything in order to get rid of this acne. And the greater the amount of fear and fright that you can create is the more people will be willing to shell out in order to satisfy and get rid of that fear or that problem. Yeah. The issue is that the problem doesn't go away. It's just like it's like in a lot of, and that's sorry, but it's the whole opioid crisis. It's like they're feeding into this frenzy of, okay, let's create more dependency.
That's right.
Let's
it perpetuates the problem, doesn't it?
It perpetuates the problem. It's never ending. The ego is never satisfied, and so therefore you are going to be spending more of your hard-earned dollars to try to fill a void in your soul that you think can be helped by external entities, but it can't. The only way to do that is to resolve what's eating you inside. You got to get to the source of the problem. It's not the acne, it's your self-esteem, and let's work on that self-esteem, not necessarily the outward manifestation of it. Once you get that inward, issue resolved and you feel whole and the confidence comes and you have your central power,
Yep.
then all of these other things are just icing on the cake. And so, yeah, unfortunately, positivity doesn't sell as well, but it is the long game.
Well, this
is the mental health game. This is the wellness game. I want to make sure that more people on this planet are walking around happy than sad. And right now, there's a lot of sad people walking around on this planet.
That's true, right? And it's often, I heard somebody say that the problem with spirituality is when we have a lot of people that are not whole, trying to be one with the world, but they're not one with themselves. Like they don't know self.
Yeah.
And it really occurred to me like that's profound because there's a lot of meditation, a lot of spirituality, yet it didn't quite get them there because they're still broken when they get out of it. They're not,
and let me tell you, everyone is broken.
Yeah.
No one is healed.
Yeah.
We are all in this together. And we don't have to look at ourselves and be like, well, I need to be fully healed in order to help somebody else. That's not true. Yes, you're going to be able to give more from a full cup than an empty cup. But you yourself are, if you can be okay with the imperfection of yourself and be aligned with the fact that you're going to be continually evolving and improving and wonderfully manifesting, then I think that we don't have to wait until this magic moment, or we don't have to frown upon somebody once they make a mistake. It's like, oh gosh, my fearless leader, they just messed up, forget it, I'm going away. And then alienating. There has to be that recognition that we're all imperfect and that we all mess up, and that we can have the capacity for forgiveness of ourselves and other people. And right now we need a little bit more of that.
We sure do. We sure do. Well, it was when we started working together, it was hard not to notice the name of the company has the word movement in it.
Yes.
Which was kind of cool, and it also was intriguing, right? Because when you talk about sort of fear selling power, and you're like, how do you overcome competitors that are totally playing into this unhealthy psychology? And you've got to win in that game. And I think that when we talk about it privately, we're all picking up on there is a movement going on. There is an awakening going on.
That's so true. And I think that was one of the reasons why I did name it the Human Beauty Movement, because I did not want it to seem like a corporation. I feel like the days of the old kind of monolithic corporation has gone by the wayside. It's now a dinosaur. And now it's all about progress. It's all about evolution. And so yes, this is a movement. Yeah. It's not something that we're going to change overnight. I think it would be unrealistic for us to think that we can change everybody's minds and all of a sudden all have this, sense of inner self-esteem and beauty. It's just not going to happen. We know that it's got to be progressive. We know that it happens within each individual person. It's not like I can give anybody else an ounce of advice and think that anybody else would listen. It's really about offering up that inspiration and seeing what resonates and seeing what little, bits and bites of maybe a message or an image or some sort of kind of stimulus can help ignite that question in people's mind, like, well, what can I do to make myself a little bit better today? Don't have to change myself radically and dramatically, but what can I do to just kind of make it a little bit better?
Well, Jennifer, when I started Exemplar 15 years ago, somebody said, why do you have to go change the world? Like, why do you have to go do that? It sounds awfully difficult. And with you've got this degree, that degree. I mean, you can go do a bunch of stuff, and this success stories that you've had. You can get a great job and get paid very well. And the words that came out of my mouth were because I can, I must. And I didn't realize that was actually quite deep. At the time, it sounded very simple. And then years later, I realized it's a definition of calling or purpose.
Yeah.
Like it was just, I knew what my cross was. I knew what my purpose was.
There.
And, so the question I pose to you is, there's a lot of things you can do, and you've chosen to take a stand. And, and those who've started businesses knows that you can throw your life savings on black a few times, and then you get a limited number of tries before you kind of time out. And particularly when you have, the family stuff you're dealing with your son and everything, and the fact that you have found with those priorities, the energy, the courage, like, why this? Like, why did you decide to do it and take that stand, take the leap?
Yeah, I will say that, these are things that don't, and some people are blessed with the aha moment. Some people are like, this is my life's calling. Perhaps that happened to you 15 years ago when you knew that you could and you must, and that was what you were going to do. For me, I did hem and haw quite a bit. It was, I think I was, it just wasn't the right time at that time because I wasn't willing to take that step, whether it might have been because I wasn't in a financially secure enough place in order to be able to go out on a limb and be able to say, I'm going to put all my cards on black now, or whether I believed in myself enough to do it. And like I mentioned, I had suffered from self-esteem issues, but then ultimately, I'm turning 50 this year. I am like getting ready to take the big dive into the next half of my life. And so I think that with thinking about how do I want to spend the rest of my life and thinking about what really means something and what kind of legacy that I want to leave behind, I really and truly kind of circled and found my ikigai, if you're familiar with that term of ikigai, of trying to combine what I loved with what I did well, with what the world needed, and what I thought that could, be somewhat rewarding from a financial or from a just more of a sustainability, from a work and regenerative and abundant standpoint. And so, in combining all of those things, I essentially came to the fact that my ikigai, the center of what my work should be, is to inspire compassion. And how I do that is manifested in this way of finding inner beauty and being able to celebrate diversity and inclusion and wellness. And a lot of that, of course, as you probably guessed, is inspired by my son's story. Because now he's 14 years old and he is, still a boy who is severely disabled. He has a lot of health needs, and recognizing that there are biases against, the disabled community and those that are differently abled or have neurological differences. I've become, very much aware of that important sect of our society that is underserved and in the minority as well. And so, but I saw his beauty every single day. I saw the spirit in him touching other people's lives with compassion, because as soon as you see somebody who is, so much in a different place physically from you are, it does shake you up a little bit. It does make you all of a sudden recognize within yourself, again, by comparison, but that's the way that we kind of operate sometimes. It's like, I really have a really good life. I don't really have too much to complain about. I have the ability to walk. I have the ability to talk. I have the ability to eat. I have the ability to draw breath. These are things that he cannot do on his own without support. And so, trying to think about that and then bridge what I have been working on before, which was beauty, is just thinking about the beauty of humanity, the beauty of this, this quilt that we all are in society, and coming together and being unified and being one. And I would love to be able to at least plant the seeds for more love of humanity, more kindness, and more compassion through everything that I do, whether it be the children's books that I'm writing or the human beauty movement and the products that we're putting out, and so a lot of these again are just manifestations of what the values are.
That's beautiful.
Thanks.
I know how hard you work, and I know, and there's a lot I don't know, but I know that caring, you've taken great lengths to care for your son. And to find the energy, it would tire almost anybody out and zap their energy entirely. And to find the energy within to do what you're doing now is just nothing short of remarkable.
Well, I will say that because, you've titled this Exemplary Women, and I told you, I think that's a load of BS, because I'm not an exemplary woman. I think that every woman and every person is exemplary. I just happen to be sitting here on this couch with you right now.
The first of many.
But truly, I went through this period where I had tremendous depression, where it was hard. My marriage was falling apart. I had, my son's health issues, and I ended up going into this really deep, dark place. I needed help, and I found it in prescription medicine. And so for years, I found myself being able to cope. by using prescriptions, and I think that a lot of prescriptions are demonized in society now. I will say that they serve a purpose, and I'm not afraid to mention that here, because they help you get by when things are really getting bad. But then once you're able to lift yourself out of a deep, dark place and say, yeah, I can function, maybe at that time is the time for you to be able to get reflective and be able to say, you know what, let me think about myself. Let me think about how I can stop, being so self-absorbed in misery and decay, and instead focus my sights on helping other people. Not just my immediate family, because that's a responsibility. I think that's part of a role. It's like, I as a mom, I can't imagine doing it any other way. But now I feel like I have a responsibility to share that beyond my own family, and to be able to help other people, other women, other folks that may have gone through some sort of a similar crisis, which right now is a big pool of people in COVID.
Yes,
to be like, you're going to be able to get through this. It's not easy when you're going through it and you can't see the light at the end of the tunnel, but I assure you that we're all in this together, and we're here to support each other.
Well, Jennifer, based on what you just said and knowing that part of your history, I assure you that most of the viewers would disagree that that your story of overcoming all of this and then stepping up to help is nothing short of exemplary. But I'll tell you how the feedback goes. I have no doubt. But before we go, because there is a book coming.
Yes.
Doesn't have a title yet.
Yeah.
But what's it about?
Yeah, I actually felt compelled. As I was kind of turning the year, from 2019 to 2020, I thought to myself, what are the things that I really want to, set as far as goals for myself this year? And one of them was to really see what I could do to put this idea of compassion and helpfulness into a tome that might be able to help other people. And so I started to scribe a book. I'm still in the process of doing it right now. But again, it's really about, finding that light and that beauty within ourselves, and understanding that, happiness is not something to be sought at, from external factors. It's really something to kind of search within yourself and to be able to explore within. And so the book goes through, certain things that have been helpful for me. Journeying about, being able to kind of withstand all the pressures and the talk and the judgments of other people, and really kind of trying to kind of isolate yourself from that and really kind of look at yourself in the mirror. I'd be very reflective. I kind of think about, and a lot of what I talk about in the book is this sense of duality and reflection. It's the yin and the yang. It's the idea of opposites, and it's also the idea about what people say is often just something that they're feeling within themselves. It has nothing to do with you. You're just that mirror kind of shining what they're feeling, what those discomforts are, and what those fears are, and what those initial anxieties are within themselves. So it helps to kind of give you a little bit of protection or a little bit of perspective on, kind of like healthfully being able to dismiss and deflect a lot of what you hear and see around you. And so really, focusing on things like meditation practices. I go through a series on like the chakras. I'm sure like a lot of people are extremely well versed in it, but I think that there's an audience that might not be familiar, or who might have been afraid that it was a little bit of voodoo magic before, frankly. And it's frankly not. It's just another way of being able to dissect and kind of evaluate yourself and see, almost like little check boxes, what might be wrong here with my sense of insecurity? What might be wrong here with my obsessions with material things? What might be wrong here with my inability to express myself properly? So kind of like doing this little body scan and this soul scan, using chakra methodologies. I think it's helpful for us to be able to say, this is where I need to focus on myself, and this is where I'm going to improve, and this might be, a way for me to help find balance in my life and meaningful happiness.
That's amazing. I can't wait to read it.
Thank
When
you.
do you expect it to come out?
I expect it to come out later this year.
Okay, great. We'll keep an eye on it. And you have some products here on the table. You want to share a little bit about like what's going on right here?
Sure. Well, the first set of products that I'll show you is that, back when my son turned 10, we decided to launch a series of children's books called The Adventures of Super Captain Brave Man to help kids at a very early age understand about differences in physical and neurological abilities. And so the books, which we have 4 in hardcover now, kind of look like this, and they focus on different areas like, kind of global disability, autism, Down syndrome, and help kids to kind of see the sights and understand the signs, and be able to kind of broach the subject about the fact that people are different, and it's okay, and it's normal. There is, as we know, there's no new normal, or there is no such thing as normal, and there's going to be a new normal, which is that nothing's normal. Right?
I love it.
And so, so we have those on supercaptainbraveman.com if anybody is interested in checking those out. And then soon to be released, the Human Beauty Movement will have its first line of facial skincare products called Humanist Beauty, aptly named. And the first product is going to be a facial oil which is loaded with goodies. It's got CBD in it as well as adaptogens like Sacha Inchi. And so this is just a sneak peek at what the product looks like.
Beautiful.
So it's like that.
Great packaging.
Thank you. And then in honor of the idea of being inclusive and accessible, we are making available these Braille ID bands. You can see that they actually identify, this one for example is the oil band, so that if somebody is visually impaired, they'll be able to know what they're putting on.
Wow. That's amazing.
So,
great thinking.
Yeah. And then it's also available in a half size right here, as well as a free sample. So if you go right now onto humanistbeauty.com, you can enter in your physical mailing address, and we'll send you one of these when we launch.
Wonderful. I had no idea. What a surprise.
Yep.
Amazing.
Thank you, Chris.
Yes. Well, look, we've been working together for a while, and we worked with many people on the team.
Yes.
So how's it been? Like, what do you think?
Exemplar is really everything that I was hoping it would be and more. I found that, I am not a lawyer. I don't even play one on TV. At one point, I probably in my life thought that I could be one, but I realized, arguing for a living was not my thing. So I leave it up to the expert.
Bat for you.
I leave it up to the expert arguers, like my friend that's sitting on the couch with me here. So, but having somebody in my corner, because here I am, a solopreneur, starting out and wanting to make sure that I am doing it right, from a legal perspective, regulatory perspective, from a business perspective. And so having a team that's available to me at my beck and call to be able to support me and to provide references and networking and ideas and suggestions has been immensely helpful. So I appreciate it so much. I am a proud client.
Well, we love you so much. And we're like, there's so much more to come. Like, we've just begun a great journey. And I'm so excited to check in even a year from now and just see, help it grow. And that's what it's about.
And likewise. I think that what you're doing is important, and I think that it is certainly something that I'm hoping that other firms will start to emulate once they see your business model and they see how beneficial that you are in the industry. So.
Well, there's a saying, one of my favorites is, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything, right? And then, when there's nothing, we never discussed that actually, but it's something about, there's been nothing more rewarding than waking up every day standing for something. And there's no amount of money that can replace just living that. I mean, it's just knowing what you're here to do. And I'm so glad to know you and know that you're here knowing what you're here to do, and you're doing it. And so thank you for joining us. You are an exemplary woman, I promise you. And look forward to having you again and checking in soon.
He's a quintessential exemplary man,
I was raised by women, so it's all
That's why.
That's why. Thank you very much for coming on.
You're welcome.
Good to see you. Thanks, everyone. Talk to you soon.